fan of speeds?
Derek speeds too.
I would never.
Of course not.
I don't think I broke 120 on the way home yesterday.
SL stands for Sport und Leicht, which means sport and light.
Yeah, and it's neither of those things. And hasn't been for some decades, actually.
So what the fuck is wrong with Mercedes?
A lot of things are right with them, but I think they lost their way on the SL a little bit, because at the origin, it was kind of badass. I would posit, and I'm not the only person who thinks this, it's kind of the McLaren F1 of its day.
Did you just say posit?
Yes.
Do people say posit?
I would suggest, I would put forth...
How about I'ma say? I'ma say
the SL, the 300 SL, was the McLaren F1 of its day. It was motorsports derived. It was the fastest thing that was around. It was incredibly technically sophisticated, and like lots of celebrities and stuff bought them. And they sold 1,400 Gullwings and 1,858 Roadsters against 100 F1s. But anyway, I think that car was really like special when it came out. And then every generation since, more or less, has been sort of rubbish in its own right. Rubbish is not the right word. They're superb cars, but they're not sports cars, and they're not light.
Okay, so this episode we're going to talk about the Mercedes SL. Welcome to the Carmudgeon Show. My name is Derek Tam-Scott, and this is Jason Cammisa. Right?
Checks out.
Come on, you're supposed to hit the bullshit button. That's the best button in the world. Okay, so here's my theory. The original SL was the 300 SL, which was the Gullwing, which is the first direct injected engine in the 1950s, which is amazing.
First production fuel injected car.
Direct injection, not just fuel injected. Like that was, and it was done, it was perfect, it was amazing, and then it wasn't touched again for 50 years almost. Every SL afterwards is not an SL.
Agree.
The actual spiritual successor to the, you agreed with me? Ugh. Not allowed to agree with me yet. Fight with me first. The actual spiritual successor to the SL is actually the SLR McLaren, the SLS AMG Gullwing, and the AMG GT. And every SL in between, which would be the 190 SL, the Pagoda, the R107, the R129, the R230, and the 231, have nothing to do with the original SL, should not be called SL, and are a complete different type of car. Now you can agree with me.
Okay, I agree with you 100%. So now
That's it? Should we just end the episode? No. I have way more to say. Okay, let's go generation by generation and talk about what's wrong or right with the Mercedes, right? So that, with this SL. So the first generation was 300 SL, right? We talked about space frame. I mean, it had that lovely, what's the English term for that rear suspension?
Swing axle.
Yeah, axle. So many cool like names in German you can call things. A swing axle, that killed people. That's always a fucking benefit. Anytime a car will pitch itself sideways, roll over and kill everyone. It had drum brakes, but a massive 3-liter. 3-liter? Mm-hmm. It's 3-liter straight six. By the way,
drum brakes until March of 61.
Not April?
March.
61? So anything made up until like February 28th, 1961?
I don't know what day in March, I'm sorry.
Okay, so is it some point?
Did you want me to leave?
No, I want you to like, I want you to get a fucking life, actually. All right, so, but anyway, that is one of the best sounding engines I've ever heard in terms of induction noise.
Induction noise?
Mechanical noises.
And
exhaust, it didn't really have much.
Yeah, when they have exhausts on, or like no exhaust on them, they sound good. They sound like tractors though, if you're just pottering around. You need the induction noise or else it sounds kind of like a tractor.
Yeah, there's the deepest full, the way I think I described it in like my notes when I drove the car was, it's a wall of sound. It's a full, like if you looked on a spectrum analyzer, you'd see it's hitting every frequency.
Yeah. It's worth viewing a video.
Yeah.
It's
worth driving in person because it's really hard to capture that depth of
because
sound.
It's sort of, it envelops you, especially in a Gullwing, because those cars have sort of a cabin in which you feel like you're very enclosed in the car.
You're in a fishbowl. Would you rather have a Gullwing or a convertible Roadster?
Gullwing.
Why?
I don't know. It's so iconic and it's so sort of like hot.
But
they're really hot inside.
Yeah,
and the swing axle is a little scary, and they don't have trunks. And but
you're not selling this because the Roadster rides better, has disc brakes. All of them do.
Well, no, the disc brakes started in March of '61, so Roadster production started in '57. So '57.
So there were some Roadsters? Okay, the Roadsters that I drove all have fucking disc brakes.
Yeah.
So fuck you and your information too, because I don't really care. The Roadster, they ride better. They're just wonderful. And you get to hear that
by
engine.
modern standards, they all suck. So, if you're going to have a sucky experience, then why not have the
iconic?
The iconic.
Because the Roadster's half the price.
No, it's not.
2/3 the price.
No, not even.
I thought they were like $750 to $800 for Roadster and $1 million for Gullwing.
They're like
twice.
$100,000 to $200,000 apart now. So,
All
it depends on if it's a late Roadster, it's an alloy block motor and disc brakes, then it's more expensive than a Gullwing. But anyway, whatever. They're all. Who cares? I don't have $1 million. So.
Yeah, neither do I. So, okay, so let's move on from the.
But epic car.
Epic car, right? One of the best experiences I've had.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's not a very imaginative choice. 300 SL has to be one of the most recognizable classic cars there is, along with a Cobra and I don't know what else. But they truly are deserving of the hype that everyone sort of assigns to them.
I agree.
And the fact that they built so many of them, 2,800 of more, whatever, of these cars. And they're still so valuable is a testament to that, because there's no other car that has that kind of production volumes that is worth so much money.
No other car?
I don't know. I can't think of one.
I don't know.
Can you think of a car that they built over 3,000 of that is worth over $1 million?
No, they're usually under $500,000. And the only other one would be Countach. Right? They build a fuck ton of Countaches, and they're
but the most valuable Countach is $1 million, and they only made 140 or 150 of the LP400s. In any case, Pagoda,
not an SL, not an SL. So the 300 SL, right, was a racing car that was basically, it wasn't a homologation car, but it was effectively a race car converted for the street. The Pagoda had nothing to do with that.
No, there's nothing sporty about the experience. They're not particularly light either, although to be fair, the 300 SL is not actually that light either, but it had a space frame, which was meant to be light.
Right.
And I guess it was light compared to a separate frame car. Anyway, the Pagoda, the steering ratio is very slow, it has a lot of body roll, the motor has no sporting character.
You can get a Pagoda as a 280, and that twin cam motor actually sounded really good.
It's a single cam.
You couldn't get a twin cam Pagoda? Really?
Nope.
They revved that high? Didn't they rev to 62, 6,300?
Didn't matter.
I thought they sounded a little racy, and it's straight six noises. I mean, no straight six made a bad noise.
Yeah, but it's basically like a 280 SE motor. The car feels kind of like a 280 SE.
It's all the same component set. This is the difference, right? The original SL was its own thing, and the Pagoda started down the trail of just being a component set of every other.
Yeah, it was repackaged Mercedes components from other cars that were sort of in an admittedly very attractive body. That's probably the best part of that car. I would say the ideal use case for a 280 SL is you drive around in LA at sort of after it's no longer hot with the top down and people are seeing you and you're sitting in traffic.
Therein lies the problem with the Pagoda, because the Pagoda looks best with the hardtop on it, which is what gave it its name. So why would you nickname a car that's a convertible after the way it looks with the hardtop on it?
Because everywhere else in the world you have to leave the top on most of the year.
Yeah, but the top is 250 pounds, requires 14 people to remove. The Pagoda, I think it's cute. I always thought it was lovely and little French-looking design, little quirky, but I never thought it was delicate, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a great Mercedes, and then it was replaced by the
high quality, though. Traditional Mercedes values. You just have to judge it as a Mercedes sedan that's not form factored as a sedan. Then it's a good car. But if your expectations are that it's going to be anything remotely like a sporty
or light, right? Exactly.
Yeah, then that's not.
Well, and the 107. Which had one of the longest production runs of any car in history. That was 1971 through 1989. Started out as a 350 SL, 450 SL, then 380, and 560 with a 500 in between for Europe.
Yeah, the 500.
That thing
you
went
could also
on
get it as
forever.
a 300 SL, 280 SL.
That's right.
And the 420 SL.
With a stick, you can get the 380.
280.
280.
And 300, 280.
Could you get it? You can never get a V.
You could get a 4-speed 350.
Right.
Even in the U.S.
Which is bizarre. But there was nothing sporty about that car.
No.
The defining characteristics of a 107 are you get on the gas and it's got about 12 feet of rear suspension squat.
Yes.
So they're like power boats, which makes it fun in a 560, which was completely overpowered. So 560s would light up
Not
the
in
rear
the
tires.
U.S.
560s?
with 238 horsepower.
Yeah, but all the torque's from 5.5 because it was not a 5.6, it was a 5.5. But you could just light them up. Like they would start in second gear, right? You sort of put them in first and just hit it, and it would just go. Yeah, it would raise the front end. It was like a little power boat, which was hilarious because there was nothing else sporty about the car. The steering wheel is like an inch away from the windshield and the dash. So if you actually tried to turn the wheel quickly, you like take your fingers off at the dash and then the windshield. You've noticed this, right? Have you not?
I don't think I ever tried to go around a corner in one because it was so uninspiring. No,
Okay,
I mean,
so
like
you never
it
got
tucks
sideways?
It like tucks under the way a 123 does or a 116.
They tuck under, and then if you so much as touch the gas, bye. They have that swing. They're still swing axle.
Really?
So they are motherfuckers to catch in slides. I mean, they just explode sideways, and there's no point in trying to catch
This is
it.
the kind of shit you know that I have
Only
no
because I
desire.
had one. Like when I was in, I was in college. I was like probably 21 years old, 20, and I bought one to flip and sell, and I almost flipped it and flipped it. I mean, it was like, I drove it like an asshole, and that was actually a 380, which would still
Aren't they like
not
kind
be,
of gutless?
10 seconds to
380s?
60, but they sounded good because they were V8s. Nothing near as bad as the 450s, which had a bigger engine that made less power, about the same, but the 450s had a 3-speed, the 380s had a 4-speed. So, but they would all light up tire.
Shit, you know if you're Jason Cammisa.
Shit, if you're 20 years old and driving a Mercedes, think you're all baller until you get it sideways and you're like, fuck, and you almost die. But anyway, that is probably the least sporty of any SL. And by the way, the 107 sold better and better and better and better. Its best sales year was its last.
Really?
Its 18th year, which is like unbelievable.
That's shocking.
It's
to
shocking.
Me.
Well, people became rich, right? Mercedes became a thing. Like in the 80s, Mercedes were relatively common, nothing like they are today. But in the 60s, they were really big deals. In the 70s, they were still really big deals. So I think the market for those cars grew, and the SL grew into it. Plus, let's not forget the 129 was 10 years late. So the 129 was the one that replaced it in 1990, 89 technically. That car was 10 years late because Mercedes diverted all of its engineering resources to the 190 for fuel economy standards. So the 107 was basically a reskinned Pagoda. There was nothing new in there at all. And it was meant to be a stopgap until they were able to deliver the R129 in 1980. I think it was supposed to be 1980, and it wound up being 10 years late. But the 129, we've both owned one. I had a 300 SL stick, you had a 500 SL. That is a majestic, magic, incredible piece of engineering that is nothing to do with sporty, and it was light in no way, shape, or form. Another one, not an SL.
Correct. But it is a magnificent automobile. It is my favorite generation of SL after the 300 SL.
Yeah, mine too.
After the original.
Even though I would say they really should have just come up with a different name. I mean,
Agree. I mean, they should have done that in 1963, 64 when the 230 SL came out.
Right. But think about, transport ourselves back to 1989 when that car came out. You were not born yet, and I remember you were there, but
It was technically
you were staying on the sheet at that point. Sorry. But no, I mean, that car redefined what a convertible could be structurally, crash-wise, luxury-wise. I mean, it was a fully automatic
mechanical
roof.
sophistication.
Yep.
I mean, it's just spectacular on that car. I think it's also really good looking. I think Bruno Sacco said that it was I think he used the word perfect. It's
I would say it was perfect.
his favorite design of any.
But remember, that styling language was supposed to have debuted in 1980 on that car, and instead debuted on the 126. So his 126 was his first I'll sketch this new design language, and he didn't quite fully commit. So the 201 came, and then the 124, the E-Class, the 300E that we know. And then by the time that 129 came out, 10 years later, he had time to refine it and refine it and refine it. I think it's perfect. I think it's stunning. It's not sporty in the traditional sense. It's sporty in the Bentley sense. This is a sporting machine.
Yes.
And then after the 129's
I think we could just
leap,
stop the episode here. There's nothing else to talk about at this point.
well, the 230 we'll move on. The 231.
It was.
So the 231, which is the current one, which I can't believe is even still on sale because I don't think I've ever seen one on the road. I was there when they debuted this design of the car. So it was a bunch of journalists. We went to the design center in LA, and Mercedes flew us in on a private jet. And I remember saying to one of the other guys, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why are they flying us in a private jet? Like, what are they trying to make up for? Well, we fucking found out, because when they pulled the sheet off of this car, we just all started like laughing. We're like, what the fuck happened to this poor thing? And there's a Scottish PR guy who was the best PR guy in the business. And he was like, "Look, stop right there, stop your laughing. Look, good design is immediately apparent. Great design takes time." And we were like, wow, he deserves a fucking Emmy and a raise. And like, that was the best line of bullshit ever. That car was fucking hideous, but it was amazing to drive.
Was it?
Still is. It's amazing to drive. Yeah. This was the first time since the 129 that Mercedes really went back to the engineering board and made something happen that had never happened before. So that's it's all aluminum. And the techniques that they use to engineer and construct the car had never been done before. So it has the world's largest extruded piece of aluminum ever used in an automobile.
So Mercedes-Benz.
It's so right. Like the entire firewall is one piece of extruded aluminum or some stupid shit, or magnesium. It's like, this is almost 10 years ago now. But the car drives like $1 million. Nothing sporty about it. Also, they went to aluminum and it's not light, so it's not an SL. But I would argue that the SLR, which I've still never driven,
it's an experience.
Is it? It's good?
For sure.
A good experience or a bad experience?
No, I mean, like, you know, it makes all these noises and the doors go out like this. And my strongest recollection from that was that I was following a first generation Prius when I was driving an SLR for the first time, and he drove clear off the road. Like, I was watching him drive towards the shoulder, and like he left the roadway. I don't know.
Did it have anything to do with the SLR?
I mean, I assume he was distracted by the SLR's presence. It has a ton of presence. It's like an aircraft carrier. It's a long hood, like all of this noise. It's huge. It's a massive car. Like, it is definitely I mean, were those things like $300,000 when they were new or something like that?
Crazy money.
Like, it has a carbon fiber chassis. Like, it's really epic to behold. I don't know that it's good, but it's definitely like something.
It's definitely a replacement. It's definitely in the vein of the original 300 SL,
yeah,
right?
In terms of exoticness and presence and sense of occasion,
Right.
and like,
and moving the engineer bar forward in a space frame versus whatever else. And then the successor to that was the SLS, which, I mean, every time I got in or out of one, I remember knocking myself clear unconscious because it was a Gullwing, but the door didn't go up high enough. Like, it wasn't low enough that you would think, oh, I can't fit under this. And it wasn't high enough that you could fit under it. So
but it was high enough that you couldn't reach it to close it.
Yeah, it's true. You have to sit on the sill and then pull it down. That was an okay car, but that was the next Viper. Like, this is the part of this that, like, no one realized.
It's not a sports car in the, like...
It's based on a sports car, right? I mean, so when Daimler and Chrysler split up, Mercedes was like, fuck you, we take our homework with us. And they took the design for the Gen 2 Viper, basically, and turned it into the SLS. So it was...
Complete with transaxle?
No, that's the joke. But if you look underneath the car, you can see where there was space for a torque tube and everything else. So if you look under...
well, it has a torque tube because it's a transaxle.
Because transaxle, I'm sorry, where there's space for transmission up front.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, the Mercedes will deny this to the end, but if we did I think it was when the SLS came out, I was at Road and Track and we got a Viper and an SLS together, and we just started looking at all of the similarities. And you can see there was space up front for a transmission that wasn't there. The suspension design was identical. It was just an evolution of them. So the SLS really was supposed to be the next generation Viper, which is so fucked up. Look at it. I mean, it's got that same like ridiculously long hood proportion. Yeah. But I don't think that was a great car. And
it's special, and there's a sense of occasion to it, which you don't get in a lot of modern cars.
Right. But have you ever driven an SLS AMG Black Series?
I haven't.
Okay. That is, if I had to give an award for the car that is the most improved from like base to a special edition of all time, that might get it. Because the regular SLS was and the Black Series was so good. And I think that was what made Mercedes realize that if you're going to commit to a sports car, you commit fully. And that's part of why the AMG GT is as good as it is. But I think we can at least agree that the SLR SLS AMG GT is actually the successor to the original SL.
In terms of sporting intent, absolutely. And like, I'm hugely impressed by the AMG GT. I mean, something that size has no business behaving the way that that car does. And
it also has hydraulic steering.
is it like the last thing ever to have hydraulic steering?
No, but it's still really good. So, all right. So we've solved the problem of the Mercedes SL, which is that there is the 300 SL and then the SLS SLR AMG GT family, and then everything in the middle from the Pagoda to the 107 to the 127, 230, and 231 are not SLs, and they are a farce, and they are improperly branded, and Mercedes should have called them something else.
Agree, and I think they're going to axe it forever.
Oh, you think they're going to kill the SL?
I mean, who buys those people? Cars.
Who buys those people?
What
How
people?
do you view the human being, Derek Tam-Scott, if you think people are buying people? The people who can afford
It's
AMGs
happened for decades.
And
they,
the rich
they're
people
probably
do.
the descendants of the people who were buying people 200 years ago.
To end this episode, I'm going to agree with that. You're fucked up.
As if you're not?
It's true. Yeah, that ain't even bullshit. It's true. Bye.